Smells delicious as always.
Sadie was the real cook.
Hey, don't sell yourself short. Not much that's better than your home-cooked eggs.
We're so used to our video game protagonists being presented as near-perfect people, it's nice to have something a little different come along to prove that this isn't always the case. In Adios, the new first-person narrative game from the folks over at Mischief, for example, the character you play as hates himself so much that when stepping into his bathroom, there's no mirror on the wall, indicating that even he can no longer stand the sight of himself. It's because of the little details like this that you'll forgive Adios for all its technical flaws and budgetary restraints, instead remaining eager to learn more about this person and their ambition to make up for past sins. I'm Aaron from Console Deals, now let's get into why. Even by the genre's usual standards, calling Adios a walking simulator is a bit of a stretch. Because while you do indeed engage in conversations from a first-person view, complete simple tasks and move around a believable environment at your own pace, here there's absolutely no puzzles to solve or challenges to overcome. Instead, it's the story, and more specifically the dialogue between two central characters, that is placed front and centre. You play as a lowly pig farmer who decides he no longer wants to dispose of bodies for the mob. This forms the basis for an in-depth discussion between yourself and a hitman, otherwise known as one of your closest confidants.
I don't think you do.
I do.
And you still think you can quit?
It's a free country.
After being introduced to this basic setup, it's a simple case of watching this tension slowly stretch out over the course of an hour or so. By taking a tour of the farm and selecting specific dialogue choices, you come to learn more about the two's relationship with one another, the pig farmer's reason for wanting to quit, and how both of these factors are potentially intertwined. It's a genuinely unique method of storytelling, at times even leading you to question why it even had to be told within the framework of a game at all. However, you definitely feel the weight of the situation by witnessing this dialogue directly through the pig farmer's eyes. Adios wouldn't nearly keep you as hooked as it does without the amazing performances of its two lead characters. Rick Zaif, as the pig farmer, is always looking for a way out of his muddy life, and is appropriately gruff and knows exactly when to read lines in a more somber tone so as to help you empathise with his unique sort of plight. Then, DC Douglas gives a great performance as the calm, cool and collected hitman, trying to reason with his lifelong friend and doing his best to avoid trouble while keeping him within the game. There are a few other voices that pop up here and there, but the constant back and forth between the pig farmer and hitman showcases the game's stellar writing the best. You might not have to touch your Xbox gamepad much during the game's brief runtime, sure, but with voice work like this, it's hard not to stay gripped.
No need for all that, stimulation.
Ah, so you play horseshoes.
Or read a good book.
This may not be your traditional walking simulator, as already mentioned, yet it still does a good job at setting you within an interesting environment worth exploring. Thankfully, you're afforded plenty of opportunity to do this, especially towards the end, as the pig farmer and hitman complete a typical day's worth of chores and tasks while trying to talk each other out of their own mindsets. You'll milk goats, feed your horse and go fishing, all as you engage in several philosophical debates about some of life's loftiest topics, such as is there a heaven or hell? It may seem bold for a quaint little indie game like this to tackle themes so big and so ambitious, but Adios does well to lend two well thought out perspectives on most of them. While the pig farmer is very much a pre-established character, there are a couple of moments in the conversation that you'll be able to select your most preferred dialogue response. Unfortunately though, most are pretty uninspired and almost always lead to the same outcome. More often than not, a basic yes or no response always leads to identical lines being uttered, though Adios does get a little more experimental with its dialogue system in its latter half. Washed out responses you're able to read but not fully select, for example, give you an insight into the farmer's true thoughts, and is a nice way to add an extra dimension to his own mindset. I just wish there were similar flickers of creativity elsewhere in the game. In terms of the visuals, Adios does nothing to hide its nature as being an indie title with clear budget limitations. This is indeed a fully realised 3D adventure played out from a first-person view, though frequent frame rate stutters are an all too common occurrence, as is environmental pop-in. Such graphical drawbacks are never an issue for the most part, yet the drama of the story's climax does find itself undercut a little due to some schlocky animations. However, none of this ever diminishes the powerful ending. Overall, I can safely say that I've never played anything quite like Adios. The technical limitations might see the story buckle slightly under the weight of its own narrative ambition, but luckily the dialogue and general realisation of these two complex characters makes the hour-long playthrough worth it. It very much feels like a piece of performance art captured in a game, taking the traditional staples one would expect from a modern walking simulator and not being afraid to experiment with them. We give Adios a 3 out of 5.
What, you just keep a horse around because they're beautiful?
Horses belong on farms.
Uh-huh.